Picture this. It's 1974. A retired school teacher living out in rural Ohio walks to her mailbox, opens it up, and pulls out her monthly Social Security check. I really want you to step directly into her kitchen with me for this explainer, because what happens next, it's literally a masterclass in a forgotten, wonderfully stubborn kind of American resilience. She opens the envelope, and the amount staring right back at her is exactly $89.
Okay, let's dive into this. Her rent for the month was $60. So simple math tells us that she had exactly $29 left for the entire rest of the month. Think about that. $29 for groceries, for medicine, and for heating her house during those bitter, freezing Ohio winters.
I mean, this is the ruthless math of survival, right? That incredibly narrow margin had to stretch for 30 whole days. But here is the absolutely fascinating and frankly awe-inspiring part of her story. She didn't ask for help. She wasn't complaining at all. She just walked right back inside, opened up her cupboard, and got to cooking.
See, what came out of her kitchen, and literally millions of other kitchens just like hers every single day for the next 20 years, is profoundly misunderstood today. This wasn't some symbol of lack. We're not talking about poverty food. It was survival food. And understanding the crucial difference between those two concepts is exactly what we're going to unpack today. Because really, it's a total masterclass in sheer independence.
To see exactly how they pulled this off, let's look at the classic Appalachian bean pot. In homes all across Appalachia, the South, and the Midwest, there was pretty much always a pot of beans simmering on the stove. Navy, Pinto, Great Northern, honestly, whatever was cheapest. A bag of dried beans was under 50 cents, and that could feed a person for 3 straight days. But the absolute secret weapon here? The Sunday ham bone. It was entirely free, already paid for by the weekend's dinner. You just toss it into some cold water with a diced onion, let it simmer low and slow, and it completely transformed that pot, until the broth turned beautifully smoky and the beans got thick and creamy.
Now, served with just a simple square of cast iron cornbread, you have to understand, this wasn't some meager, humble ration. No way. This was a nutritionally complete meal. We're talking high in protein, packed with fiber, and rich with essential fat extracted right from that bone. The truth is, seniors eating this hearty stew were often fed way better and kept physically warmer for hours than people spending $20 a day at the grocery store. They just didn't know it, because nobody was telling them.
And, that same ingenuity popped up everywhere. Take the story of a woman in western Pennsylvania who made potato soup every single Thursday for 40 years. Now, this wasn't because Thursday was a special occasion. It was because Thursday was the day right before her check arrived, and the kitchen was almost entirely bare. Potatoes and onions cost basically pennies. The evaporated milk, completely shelf-stable. She just let those potatoes break apart as they cooked to naturally thicken the broth, without needing a single drop of expensive fresh cream.
And this brilliantly illustrates the foresight baked into these recipes. The meal actually got better on the second day. The starch from the potatoes thickened overnight in the fridge, creating this incredibly rich, creamy texture. She'd eat it with plain white bread dragged right through the bottom of the bowl to catch every last drop. The entire pot cost less than $1, fed her for 2 days, and she never once considered it a lesser meal. This ingenuity builds into an even more advanced strategy, which is preventing meal fatigue using just one single pot. Take the 3-day life cycle of the classic cabbage and sausage meal. On day 1, it's served hot straight from the pot. The cabbage is silky and sweet, and thick sausage coins perfume the broth with garlic and smoke. Then day 2, it's reheated, but this time with torn chunks of bread dropped directly into the broth to soak up all that deeply developed flavor. By day 3, whatever was left got mashed slightly with a fork and served as a thick, hearty stew over white rice. That is 3 totally distinct dining experiences from one inexpensive pot. Brilliant, right?
But here's the thing, this meal wasn't just cheap, it was physically accessible. For an older adult with arthritic hands, this required 0 knife work. The cabbage could literally just be torn by hand. The smoked sausage links snapped right apart. It required almost no hand strength and no special culinary skills. And because of this, it became a universal survival meal that crossed all ethnic lines. Polish grandmothers in Chicago, German families in Wisconsin, black families in Mississippi, everyone arrived at this exact same pot, because poverty and survival really don't care where your people.
Obviously, this wasn't glamorous food, but look at what it actually provided: independence over restaurants. It kept folks independent in rural areas when the only alternative was going hungry or having to ask for help they were famously way too proud to request. The sheer ability to feed yourself from your own shelf, entirely on your own terms, that was worth far, far more to that generation than any fancy dining experience ever could be.
Which brings us to the ultimate week-long stretch, the vegetable beef soup. You'd go get a soup bone from the local butcher, which, by the way, was often given away for almost nothing, because younger generations had completely forgotten how to use them. Then you throw in carrots, turnips, canned tomatoes, and a handful of barley to thicken that broth until it literally clings to the spoon. Simmered low and slow all day long, that broth turned a gorgeous deep amber.
You could make this pot on a Monday, eat from it all the way through Thursday, and because the vegetables absorbed more flavor every single day, it provided a completely different sensory experience every time you sat down at the table. Think about what this actually required. One burner, one pot, and a whole lot of patience. It asked absolutely nothing of aging, unsteady hands except the simple, stubborn ability to hold a ladle during those long, freezing winter weeks when the check was thin and the grocery store was miles and miles away.
So I think it's time we shift our paradigm here and really redefine what we're looking at. These dishes were not symbols of poverty. This is domestic engineering and nutritional science at its absolute pinnacle. It is the outright mastery of extracting maximum calories, maximum flavor, and maximum dignity from minimal resources, utilizing decades of accumulated hard-won experience.
So the crucial point is captured perfectly in this quote from the source. These were not poor man's meals. These meals were engineering. Because calling it a poor man's meal kind of implies something lesser, right? Something to be ashamed of until better days arrive. But the men and women making these pots weren't cooking from a place of lack. They were cooking from a place of profound, lifetime knowledge. Literally nothing was wasted. Every single ingredient had to completely justify its place in that pot.
Contrast that with how we live today. We have this massive reliance on expensive, frankly fragile food systems, grocery delivery ops, pre-portioned meal kit subscriptions, you name it. But the 1970s senior, they didn't need any of that. They didn't need an app, and they certainly didn't need anyone to feel sorry for them. All they had was a pot, a burner, and what they already knew in their heads. And what they knew was always enough to survive with incredible dignity.
And here is the enduring truth that we really need to take away from this explainer. The raw materials for this kind of incredible survival, they haven't actually changed. A bag of dried beans is still incredibly cheap today. A head of cabbage still costs less than $1. You can still walk right up to a butcher counter and get soup bones for next to nothing. The physical ingredients required for that level of self-reliance are still sitting right there on our grocery store shelves.
Which leaves us with this final, vital question to consider. The ingredients haven't disappeared, but has the knowledge? By trading essential, resilient life skills for modern convenience, we really have to ask ourselves what profound capabilities we've accidentally lost in just 2 generations. Thanks so much for joining me today, and hey, I highly encourage you to go look at your own pantry in a whole new light.